Hey, so this is my third video now, and I definitely had intended to do um, more videos just reflecting, like video journaling, as I've been calling it. Um, but I've just gotten busy and distracted with things, and part of it is just laziness. so, um, but today I wanted to talk about how how I went from having paralyzing social anxiety to being able to perform in front of hundreds of people. The reason I'm doing this video today is because I actually came out to DC uh, today from Philly for a big event, for a performance. I am a poet. Well, it's one of the things that I do, and it's just been something that's kind of been building in my life as of the past year or so, as I've taken it a little bit more seriously. But today especially because I have this huge event, and I find myself reflecting like, how on earth did I go from like really having not just it's just like this debilitating social anxiety where I would have anxiety attacks when I had to be in social situations or around people, absolutely no confidence, with being around people, with myself. And it just, it almost feels like I was a different person. Like, it feels like I had a different life back then because now I do it somewhat often. And yeah, so I just kind of want to reflect on how I think I got to this point. Um, for me, some of the strongest memories I have in terms of my social anxiety um, stem from even like my college years, which was only 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember like I had moments like the majority of the time where I would rather sit in my dorm room and be by myself than go out and meet people or hang out with people, because I just couldn't imagine like the stress of that situation. Like, I couldn't imagine having to be able to endure that, and I didn't even understand how I thought of it as something that I had to endure. Um, and part of it is because, especially previously, I have had introverted tendencies. So being too social is actually very draining for me, and I would still consider myself an introvert, but one of those introverted extroverts or extroverted introverts. I don't know which way it goes. Where I think anyone that sees me in a social situation now, especially, would have no idea. Like, they would actually probably call me an extrovert or someone who loves socializing and gets a lot of energy from it. But in reality, actually, even though I'm able to do it now and I enjoy a lot of it through my creativity, because of my creativity, it's something that I have to be really mindful about, because if I do it for a prolonged period of time, and I'm constantly around people, I find myself very off center. I feel very drained. I find that I like to compensate or to recuperate. I go back in my shell for a few days, and no one hears from me. And so now I realize it's kind of about balance and knowing my limits of how much I can take. Anyway, so how did I go from not even being able to be around like a handful of people at a party, um, just just having this horrible like physical sensation even in social situations, not just emotional and mental. Like my whole body would tense up. I had such bad anxiety and stress that I started to go see a chiropractor when I was an undergrad. And the chiropractor, after doing one of those scans on my back to fix my posture, oh, feels good. I was just doing yoga. The chiropractor told me, first of all, he told me, "Are you planning to get pregnant anytime soon?" I said, "Definitely not. I'm still in school, and it just wouldn't have occurred to me. I wasn't even in a relationship." Anyway, that's the point. The reason he asked me that is because he was telling me that he strongly advises against it due to how bad my back looked, how bad of shape my back was in, my spine. And I was like shocked upon hearing that. Like I just could not believe that my back was so bad that I couldn't have a kid if I wanted to. Like that was crazy. And I partly knew that it had to do with my stress, even though the chiropractor asked me, like, you have or told me first that you have the back of like a 40-something-year-old truck driver. And he asked me if I had gotten any injury or anything as of late in the recent past, because he wanted to figure out why my back was messed up or why my spine was messed up. And I said, no, I wasn't in any car accident. I wasn't in any injury, like nothing. Like I've never had a spine injury. Like he's like, were you on like a roller coaster with a sudden jolt of something? I was like, no, I don't even like roller coasters. I have had nothing of the sort. And then he kind of like, after talking more to me, kind of concluded that it was because of the level of emotional trauma I had gone through in my life, that I had, the stress that I had accumulated and internalized in my body, and it just made me this really stiff, rigid, anxious, stressed, malfunctioning person. And the reason I'm sharing all that is because it definitely is related to a lot of my, issues about social anxiety and all that. Your physical state reflects your external state, or determines your external state. And your external state is a reflection of what's going on inside, So that was definitely an very alarming thing to hear. I went to some chiropractic treatments, this and that, but I, for the most part, didn't drastically change my lifestyle. In the coming years, actually, surprisingly, my life got even worse for the next year or two, before it got, I think, a lot better. And that's like a whole other video that I think that I will save for another time, or pieces of my story that you'll hear throughout my videos. But the point is just kind of understanding that like there was a prolonged period of time of extended, sort of, what do they call it? Chronic stress that I internalized. And depression, all these things were very connected to it. I was very depressed for a while. I did go through a lot of emotional trauma, for reasons that aren't so important to mention now. But there were moments, even 3-4 years ago, where I didn't have, forget the confidence, I didn't have the energy or even remote desire or physical ability I felt to even get up off of bed to go to work. I, was so erratic in my jobs and my commitments because I had such severe depression, that I couldn't do a lot of things. And one of the things that really saved me in those moments is that being a kind of almost a lifelong writer, an artist, a creative person, creative-minded person, um, having had so much emotional turmoil and trauma happen in my life, I started writing. And I felt that at that time, that was the only thing that made sense to me. Um, just writing, my story, my thoughts, my poetry, or my writing in poetry form, which is what I kind of started to do a little bit more than I ever did. And the next step was that I thought I had this like sort of like strange like conviction that I had to go out and share it. Like it was like because it was my truth that I felt no one understood, that I felt like no one was getting. I felt so alone. I felt like I have to share my truth. Because as it stands now, no one knows. And if I don't know, there was something in me, and that was like the one small thing in me that kept me going, is that I felt that I had this like truth to almost reveal. So I started going to open mics about 4 years ago, and performing like very timidly, very rigidly with paper and reading, in front of everyone. And just having to like have a knock back a couple of drinks before I went up on stage, and just having like also just a lot more anxiety and stress that I needed to have about even that, about doing that. But like I said, I had this weird urgency that I had to do this. Like I had to share my writing, I had to share my story. At the time, it was only for that. It felt like I was doing it to survive. I was doing it to stay afloat. It didn't come from I'm doing this because I want to expand my passion, or I want to build this craft, or I want to become known for this, or I want this to be a career even, or a source of income, or a real lifelong pursuit. It didn't come from any of that. It came from feeling like it was my lifeboat. And so that's why I started in the whole open mic scene. Started writing all that. And slowly but surely, over years, it became it became what healed me. My poetry, amongst many other things, but that is one of those things that I just think is such a miracle, because it's like kind of what pulled me out of my dark hole, my silenced self, and it's almost like I had to hit that extreme rock bottom, even after my chiropractor told me that he was like very concerned about me. It's like I had to hit that rock bottom to be able to like realize that I could only go up from there. Because even when I went to the chiropractor, I was not at my rock bottom. It was the subsequent year or two that I actually hit my rock bottom. And then it was just like this rope of poetry was like pulling me up, and guess where I am now? At the top of the whatever tunnel or pit. I have a performance in only a few hours, which I'm gonna get ready for very soon. Um, sorry, I didn't get ready for now. Actually, I kind of showered. And although I have a little bit of nerves and all that, I'm not really like nervous or like anxious. I'm actually really excited. Like I really, 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 really can't wait to, to be on stage and to be amongst the other artists. This event is like a curated event for up and coming women artists and entrepreneurs. And there are some really fantastic other artists that are coming, and I'm so honored to be able to even share a stage with them. So yeah, it's all very exciting. And when I was at my lowest, when I was at my most closeted self, I felt like there would be no end to that. Like I thought that was just a life I had to get used to. Like that was just the misery I was leading. Um, but I, standing where I stand now, it's like I get now why people told me like it gets better. Like it gets better. And it gets better not by taking leaps and jumps into what you want to do or where you want to be, but by taking small incremental steps every single day. Like even when I was, like I said, depressed in bed, not showering for days at a time, I had days on end like that. But I also, every few weeks, I'd muster up the courage to stumble into an open mic where no one knew me and share something and then stumble back home, you know? And so for anyone who might think like, oh, you know, getting to this point where I am now requires like an intense commitment to something, it's not so much the case. Like I've kind of approached my poetry and my creativity very um, in a laid back way. I'm very serious about what I do in the sense that I'm specific with my art and my craft, but I don't obsess over it. I'm not going to open mics every day or every week even. I do it kind of organically when it feels right. At the same time, I try to, you know, challenge myself at every point. Now that I'm better, now that I'm healed, and I feel whole again, I try to set benchmarks. Like I'm going to apply to this event and see if I can perform there. You know, last year was amazing because I got to open up for my favorite poet. You know, and she's like so famous in the poetry world of poetry, and I could never have even imagined doing that. But I got to open up for her, and that was a surreal experience. And I thought, oh my gosh, nothing can top that. But this year, I'm performing in front of even more people. You know, I have people who I haven't even met who follow my poetry who are coming to this event, which is so mind-boggling to me. And you know, what was the source of my fear and insecurity, and this is the other point I want to make, which is how I got to from having paralyzing social anxiety to being able to perform in front of hundreds of people, is that usually when you have that paralyzing social anxiety, it stems from something, right? It's maybe partly just chemical or genetic, whatever, or just the way you're conditioned over your life, but also it stems from feeling like there's something about you that you have to hide or be shameful of, or you know, that people might not like or find off-putting. And now I feel like if you're willing to delve into those things that you're fearful of about people knowing you, about your sources of weakness, and kind of attack them head on, and poetry is inherently so vulnerable, like sharing your poetry is like so emotional and vulnerable, but that's become the source of my strength now. You know, I've taken back my power because I'm owning it. Like I'm owning these emotions as opposed to trying to keep them under wraps and having no one know about them and trying to pretend like everything was okay. Now the world sees what, you know, my story, my stories, my thoughts, my different expressions. And it's almost like in sharing that, I rise above those, right? I've become bigger than those because I'm not so obsessive about, I don't even care if people think that those emotions define me because I know they don't. For me, it's expression, it's art, it's catharsis. Um, for example, like a a poem that I wrote a few months ago that was like kind of the result of what I was feeling at the time I'm sharing tonight, right? I'm sharing tonight. And I don't necessarily feel those emotions as strongly as I did before, or even sometimes I go through moments where I don't even agree with some of those emotions. But it's art, it's expression. And I'm not I'm not worried that someone's gonna hear my poem and think that this defines me. Um, because the other person's opinion actually doesn't even matter anymore, you know. Um, so I don't want to keep this video too long, but I'm trying to grab my back. Actually, my back has been acting up the past few days. Strangely enough, doing this video. What a coincidence. So that's kind of where the general gist. I might do another video tonight actually after my performance and talk about how I feel. But here's how I put it. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm burping. Most people, what's that thing like would rather like do something crazy than like speak in front of people. Like people have such hard time, like so much anxiety, social anxiety over like speaking to crowds, that they would do like any crazy thing rather than do that. Most people could not even get on a stage. So the way I see it is like even now, like for a big event like today, one of the fears that I have is like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess up. My poem that I've practiced a million times perfectly, but once I get on stage and see all those people, my nerves might get to me. Sometimes they do, but even then, what's the worst that could happen? What if you completely bombed? What if I completely bomb my poem? Right? Hopefully that doesn't happen. It just, I don't think, I don't know. I just don't think that people like will remember you for this one moment the way that the person who's center stage feels like they will be remembered. Um, most people are just like kind of inspired to see you, you know, sharing your story and doing something different. So you can inspire people that way. You can, you know, so I'll leave it at that because I really do have to get ready now. And um, yeah, thank you for listening and email me if you want to talk. Send me your thoughts. I want to hear about your life if you've struggled with anxiety or anything like that. And yeah, hopefully I will do a video tonight actually. Because I'll be all dressed up and I want to kind of do a video with that. Alright, bye!